Yes, let's now take a look at the headlines this morning with my news review team. Today we're privileged to have Kipruto Arap Kirwa, Deputy Party Leader, ANC, on my far right. Next to him we have Mark Bichachi, an analyst, also a communications consultant. And I'm looking at your column on page 15 of the Standard. What private opulence and public squalor says about Kenya as a society. I can see even your headlines are changing from political to other social matters now. And it seems to mirror what we're looking at, the headlines this morning. Crime, the court petitions, not much of politics on the front page today. It's the same story even on the Daily Nation. The top strip, Arsenal. Top four finish nearly impossible for beaten Arsenal. Food on sale, filthy and contains poisons. Something totally different. Military put to task over 1.5 billion shilling junk fighter jets. This is interesting. The Kenyan military bought 7 fighter jets from Jordan in 2007 that were later found to be defective and are now being used as sources of spare parts. This is from the Auditor General. 7 die as rain wreak havoc. That's on the back page of the Daily Nation. I look at the political news today, and of course Raila says no cracks in NASA. Well, they all say, that has been the script, there are no cracks in NASA. And I think they'll keep repeating that. But of course, we do have Kipruto Arap Kirwa, Deputy Party Leader, ANC. Why do the principals keep repeating that there are no cracks in NASA? Because the more that is said, the more people start believing that, yeah, there actually are cracks in NASA.
Well, I think this is a product of a number of speculations. Because like when Prime Minister Raila made that statement in his backyard, that is in Ugenya, possibly had in mind some of the members of ODM, not necessarily the principals in NASA. Because the much that I know about NASA and what is perceived as cracks is just jostling for positions by members of parliament. And it's normal. When you're going for power, you can trample on somebody's foot and somebody will complain. Otherwise, at the level of the principals, each one of them is ambitious and they are qualified to be presidential candidate 2022. And possibly that is what is causing some fears in some quarters of ODM.
Yeah. I'm looking at this headline on page 6 of The Nation, and they say, since swearing in of Raila as People's President, coalition has not been at ease. Do you agree with that?
Well, I met my party leader last week. On Tuesday we had a meeting. And as far as I'm concerned, the brief that he gave me is that, of course, there was not a common position struck before the swearing in. They were still consulting. But they felt that there was a bit of push from some section of the NASA coalition. But outside that, we know the danger of not being together. Yeah.
Okay. Because I'm looking at this story now, that's the story on the Standard about ODM MPs now saying that come 2022, the Raila Odinga will not hand over in 2022, claim ODM leaders. This is on page 12. But reading through the story, because initially it quotes ODM Secretary General Edwin Sifuna talking about your party leader Kalonzo Musyoka and Moses Wetangula, and the fact that a coalition agreement that was signed as NASA is as good as dead. But going down, we have nominated MP Godfrey Osotsi, who's from your party. And he says he's ready to rally all youth behind Raila. Now, this one, whether taken out of context or probably it is true, this one will cause a problem.
Well, I think Honorable Osotsi has his own right politically to make a decision that he so chooses. Whether that will amount to anything serious, the time will tell. But more important, ODM leaders have a right to say they are pushing for Raila, because what happens usually, if you have a presidential candidate, your party gets more gravitas on the ground, and you as a candidate is likely to be a beneficiary of that kind of gravitation towards your presidential candidate. So they have a right, because they have to protect their backyard by ensuring that their leader is the presidential candidate. But for us, the argument is very clear. I don't know why Sifuna has the audacity to say that the NASA deal is dead.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, the headline on page 6 reads that NASA chiefs are to meet today over disputes. Yet they claim there are no cracks.
Well, when you are in a house that there has no center anymore, it is definite that it's going to fall. And the reason why NASA is in trouble is because coalitions are primarily made to share power. If you're outside of power, there is no power to share. You know, it's like if you and I agree to share a taxi on our way home, and then there is no going home anymore, there's no need to share the taxi. And that's really what is showing up. The second thing that is showing up is you have a section of NASA that is looking backwards towards August 8th, and you have another section that's trying to look forward towards 2022. Now the problem is, if you cannot agree on what your vision is, you can also not agree on a direction, and that's what you're saying. So the lack of direction in terms of, do we agitate for August 8th or do we plan for 2022 is causing another rift. Now the issue is this: we've got to look at the individuals who form the core principles within NASA. You've got individuals who've got clout beyond their backyard, and you've got individuals who have clout just in their backyard. Now the question then becomes, can they survive without a Raila Odinga candidature as president? Because Raila Odinga is the only one who has support in the coast, has support in parts of Western, has full support in Nyanza, and also has support in various regions of the country. Now, can he be able to transition that constituency into a NASA constituency versus what it has been, an Odinga constituency? That's the question. So what NASA needs to do, if I was to advise them, is to have a lot of what is called succession planning. The immortality of Raila Odinga might be the fatality of NASA. The way they approach him as this enigma that cannot be replaced might be a dangerous thing for NASA moving forward. So they need to sit down and figure out, how do they ensure that the constituency that has supported Raila Odinga right from the 90s can be consolidated within NASA. Outside of that, they just handing over the presidency to William Ruto come 2022.
And as Mark says, probably NASA is suffering from a lack of a common agenda. That probably, yes, ODM may want things done a certain way. ANC has come out and already spoken about 2022. So you're one of those parties that is already thinking about 2022, and you say ODM is still looking at other issues. ODM has really tried, and NASA leader Raila Odinga has really tried to make this electoral justice the focal point of what NASA should be fighting for. But you seem to disagree. You seem to think that it's time to move on, forget about that issue for now. Let's just look at 2022.
If there is a common agenda that we have as NASA leaders, is a question of electoral justice. That is something that is common across the board. Because if we went to an election again, we are likely to face the same problems, litany of problems that we faced in 2017. So that is very clear. But now the question is, how do we do it? We have a president already sworn in, and he has apparatus of state. So on one thought is, okay, let us accept the status quo for the purpose of transiting and getting electoral justice fixed before 2022. Another school of thought is that the time we accept the status quo, we are already legitimizing the illegitimate. So that is where the contest
That's where you're disagreeing.
Yes, and you know, any political discourse, if you agree 100%, then one must be cheating the other. As to whether we have something still common, you know, power has not dissipated. There is still a chance for us to reclaim power in 2022. And Mark here is thinking that the taxi is not going home. The taxi will take us home come the next round of things.
So they will still be going home.
There is opportunity for us. And you see, 4 years is a long period. There are many things that will happen that will spell the political landscape.
Exactly.
And it will not be as easy as people think.
It won't be as easy, even trying to keep NASA together for the next 4 years, given the kind of issues they're facing right now. Even if we say just that misunderstanding over what exactly we should do and how to go about it, even if it's pushing for electoral justice, one party says we need elections in August, the rest say no, we should do it a different way. Which way exactly? Probably their voices are much lower, because have ANC, Wiper, and Ford Kenya offered any other option? Because what we hear is what ODM says.
Yeah.
Then the rest appear to disagree. But are they offering any other suggestions?
Now, in fact, can they offer a suggestion? That is the bigger question. You see, we need to understand that to gain political power as an opposition party has to have certain ingredients which seem to be missing in this equation called NASA. First and foremost, outside of Raila Odinga, who is charismatic, energetic enough to capture the imagination of the nation? That's the first question they must ask themselves. The second question is they have to ask themselves is what are the kinks in Jubilee that NASA has the capacity to maximize on? The fact of the matter is this. This is the third time Raila Odinga has tried the formula of a Pentagon, core principles, since 2007. Now, arguably, in 2007, he may or not or may not have won the election, since no one can tell us who won that particular election, which is the closest he got to winning. In 2013, there was a loss, and in 2017, there was a loss. That means there needs to be a strategic shift moving into 2022 if they are going to have a chance of beating Jubilee, because Jubilee's formula has worked twice now. Okay, meaning if all things hold together, then in 2022 they just need to do the same thing and they'll win again. Yes. Now that means that NASA needs to think strategically, one, in terms of leadership, two, in terms of being able to capture the imagination of the entire nation, and three, are they able to chip away at the kinks of Jubilee? Without that, then what will happen is they will hand over the presidential certificate to William Ruto in 2022, and that's what needs to be their main focus. Today, if they're focused on anything else, I'll tell you for free, Jubilee is celebrating every single day. Yes. And that's what they need to realize.
But you seem to be suggesting that probably they should change that idea of forming a Pentagon, 4 or 5 principles representing different regions, and probably just go it alone individually?
Let me tell you, that formula does not work. Because it only works when you're going towards the election and you seem like you're pulling people together. But immediately after the election, as is happening now, the Luhya community, which is considered a stronghold of NASA, is now considering, are we more loyal to Odinga? Are we more loyal to Wetangula? Are we more loyal to Mudavadi? The Kamba nation is asking itself, are they more loyal to Kalonzo or to NASA? And that's the question. So what happens is you're in a marriage of convenience, and anytime you're in a marriage of convenience, once the convenience ends, there is no marriage as well. So the question has to be that is NASA held together by the coalition of these tribes, but can they get to the point where it is not the coalition of the tribes, but it's a coalition of an idea and an agenda, where a Luhya can sit back and say, you know what, I support those guys, without thinking which individual is there. Which is if they're going to see the sleight of hand that Jubilee is doing, Jubilee is seriously branding itself as a national party. Okay, if we look at them carefully, the reason why they're even trying to do these things with making sure that the chairmen come from certain regions, and they're trying to do these balances, is because they're trying to position themselves squarely as a national party. They are styling themselves after the ANC in South Africa, after the CCM party in Tanzania, and let me tell you, once you have a monolithic party like that, that has internal democratic policies that allow someone to grow through the ranks, trust me, that party becomes hard to beat. Just ask Chadema and the DA in Tanzania, in South Africa.
Yes, Mark seems to make a lot of sense when he says that a radical shift in strategy is probably what is needed within NASA, because Kenya does need a strong opposition. But with the kind of divisions, it weakens NASA's stand, even politically. Don't you think that probably that would have been the agenda now, instead of just staying in a marriage of convenience, hoping that it will stick till 2022, when the truth is it might not?
I don't think that we're spending time praying for the thing to stick up to 2022. We are working very hard behind the scenes. And the strategy you just don't announce every other day. Number two, it's also good to understand that Jubilee is going to be premised on who is going to be the presidential candidate and who is going to be the running mate. He's doing a Jubilee script, which I do appreciate, but then he has also to understand that there are so many dynamics that will pervade the political atmosphere come the next general election. But for us, we are clear on two things. We want transitional justice, and we have a transformative agenda for the people of Kenya. To say that we do not have an agenda is to say the least, a very dishonest view. Number three, it's also important to understand that the Jubilee is in government. We are in the opposition. And therefore, when people are in government, they do the things government do. Yes. But in many cases, those in government never know when the rain will start beating them until the rain is over.
I asked Mark how come we're not seeing or hearing the voices from Ford Kenya, Wiper and ANC actually offering a suggestion of what should happen. Instead, we're just listening to ODM members saying this is what will happen, this is what will happen. Don't you think that even that kind of perception that your parties, however strong they are, that you're just answering to what ODM says, that probably you should come out strongly and say this is what we should do as a coalition?
Well, actually, we believe once you are in a partnership, you do not wreck the partnership unnecessarily. And what we've been hearing is not the Prime Minister Raila saying that he's doing this way and the rest of us are being reactive. It is members within ODM who are jostling for that position to make sure they leverage the candidature of their leader. But at our level, we believe that our leaders should be able to console. It's not for me to start causing trouble for the sake of doing so.
So there's still hope in NASA, as far as
a lot of hope.
Yeah.
And in fact, the future of Kenya lies in NASA. There is no agenda that is as transformative as the agenda of NASA, be it in Jubilee or any other political formation.
I do not fault NASA for lack of an agenda. The agenda is obvious. Electoral justice, societal reform, it is in their manifesto. I fault NASA, and I faulted them ever since before the elections, if you can remember. And I told them, an opposition party needs certain strategies. It is true in Ghana, it is true in South Africa, it's true everywhere, that if you do not have certain strategies in place, you're not going to make it. Now, unfortunately, the lack of strategy is showing. When there is no strategy is when you have lieutenants speaking different scripts from the principals. That is a clear sign of lack of strategy. You may have a strategy on paper, but that means also that strategy is not being implemented practically. And for as long as that is the case, it does not matter. You see, let me tell you, if you live in Runda and you have the best house possible and you're a bachelor and you do not have a strategy of convincing a girl who lives in Korogosho to somehow get to your beautiful house in Runda, guess what? You will remain single, because the art of pursuing political power is based on strategy. And today, let me tell you, in as much as we say let's not talk succession 2022, any opposition party will tell you that you start campaigning for the next election the day after the election.
So those who are pushing for focus on 2022 within NASA are doing it right?
Yes. That, you see, it's the only logical thing to do.
Okay.
Because that's when the law allows it, that's when you have an obvious opportunity, and more importantly, when you have ample time to execute your plan.
Okay. Yes. So now your party is in a dilemma because of how NASA has decided to approach this whole problem, especially in Parliament, so as not to be seen to legitimize Uhuru Kenyatta's presidency by staying away from key house business. That in itself has effects, because yes, MPs did not take part in the vetting of CSs, some of them stayed away from the vetting of PSs, but for how do you agree with that, and for how long should we expect that to last?
Well, that's why we are consulting, because when you are in a situation where you need to build momentum for reforms, you have to employ all manner of strategies. But now the things are settling, and therefore I think Senate will prevail across the board for us to focus on the agenda of the day and move on.
So you think that strategy should be dropped? MPs should be back at work?
MPs have been in Parliament. Even today, as we are talking here, some of the NASA MPs are in Mombasa doing business. Because you see, there is a difference between Parliament and the government. What we are saying is that the legitimacy of the president is in question. But the legitimacy of the current Parliament is not in question. Because those MPs who had problems with their electoral or whatever process, the cases have gone to court, they have been either thrown out or the situation upheld. So as far as Parliament is concerned, there is no illegitimacy. But when it comes to the issue of the President, that is where there is a problem.
Fred, you know, this is the problem I have with NASA strategic thinking. He's just said that because of a court process, Parliament is legitimate, correct? After October 26th, there was a court process. Where is the illegitimacy or legitimacy of the presidency drawn from? It is from the same process by which he's legitimizing Parliament. Now, you may not like what the Supreme Court ruled in October 26th, but if you're going to be strategic moving forward, you've got to accept that there is a ruling and it was not in your favor. And let me give you the worst example possible. In 1980-something, Diego Maradona scored a goal using his hand. It was called the goal that was scored by the hand of God, correct? To this day, 2018, video footage, every footage available, it is still considered a goal. Why? Because there was a referee who justified that result. Now, if you are in that match and you're one goal down, it would not make sense for you to spend the rest of the 90 minutes arguing the one goal. Your focus has to be to score the next goal. And let me tell you the truth. The judiciary, discounted the election in August 8th and validated the one in October 26th. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. If NASA is going to survive, it has to wake up and smell the coffee pretty quickly, because the result is, and he said it correctly, the country is settling. Guess what? We want to move on. We want to do business. We want to earn a living. The best strategy they can have has to be a strategy based on moving on. If you want to stay behind, the loss is yours.
Well, that's misplaced analogy. There is nothing further from the truth. What we said is that after August election, it was nullified on 1st of September. That process should have been, in between there should have been consultations. And that is where the illegitimacy stems from. We are not saying the Supreme Court made a mistake. The Supreme Court said the President won. And yes, the President won because he was the only one who was a serious contender. We were not in contention. So probably what he could have said is that we did not participate, therefore we have no right to say anything. But to say that there is legitimacy through the court, the way analogous to the one of Parliament, is there is nothing further from the truth.
Gentlemen, let's take a break now. When we come back, we take a look at other headlines. For example, why most election petitions fell. In 2013, judges decided to enforce measures drastically reducing number of petitions and protecting losers from punitive costs demanded by winners. We'll be looking at that and a lot more headlines, but that after the break.